Alright, section 10.4a, naming ionic compounds, part 1. Here's our objectives. Be able to correctly name the binary ionic compounds and polyatomic ionic compounds. Alright, rules for naming binary ones is really pretty straightforward, pretty easy. I actually think naming compounds is easier than writing formulas for compounds, because you don't really have to worry about how many of each thing. You just look at the formula and follow these rules. 1, write the name of the cation first. Always cation first, followed by the name of the anion. Remember, anions, if we're talking about binary, they end in IDE. You do have to remember that. You do have to change your things to IDE. But otherwise, it's pretty straightforward. So if we're looking at this, we know that magnesium, all cations, the name doesn't change. So we just write the cation, it's just the same as the element. So it's magnesium. And if you look up Cl, it's chlorine, but we're following it by the name of the anion, which would change to IDE, so it's chloride. So really, the only thing you got to do, the only thing you have to be able to do is on the last part, is change it to IDE correctly. And for most of them, it's pretty easy. There are a few that are a little bit different, but most of them are pretty simple. So NaBr, just write the name of the cation, sodium. The anion is the bromine changed to an ion, bromide. Bromide. AlF3. Once again, we don't really have to worry about any of the numbers or anything like that now. We just write, hey, that's aluminum. And we change the last part to the cation, or to the anion, and that's fluoride. Aluminum fluoride. K2S, okay, well, that's potassium. Sulfur changed to an anion would be sulfide. Sulfide. CaI2 would be calcium. And then this one is iodide. Iodide. Instead of iodine, iodide. This one's a little bit different. Hydrogen, we actually did this one on the last section the other way around. Hydrogen, and then changing nitrogen to a binary ionic, or to an anion, would make it nitride. So nitrogen loses quite a bit there. Hydrogen nitride. If we're doing polyatomic ions, here's a key. The name of the polyatomic ion does not change. Whatever's in the chart is what you use. Do not change this. Do not. Just pull it off the chart. So, typically, remember, the only positive ion was the NH4. So if it doesn't start with NH4, we're looking for all the last parts. Take away the first element and look up the C2H3O2. Find it in your chart. We know the first one. We can figure that out. That's sodium. We look up C2H3O2. We find out that's the acetate ion. So this is sodium acetate. And that's it. Don't change anything. Just write down the cation, write down the anion. The only time that we have anything that's in the front where we have to worry about is if it starts with NH4. So here's another one. Magnesium. Okay, that's easy. We can write that. Magnesium. Also, because they have parentheses, that kind of tells us, hey, that's the cation, or that's the polyatomic ion. So we look up NO3. This is one you really should know because it's like one of the most common things ever. Nitrate. Alright, so here's one that does start with NH4. And that one, we write down just ammonium. Ammonium. And then we look up CrO4. Okay, so find CrO4 and you'll find that that is chromate. Remember, the easy way to chromium, and then most polyatomic ions end in 8, chromate. Alright, CaOH. So we write the first one, calcium. We look up OH. If we don't know it, that is hydroxide. Alright, why don't you take a minute, stop the video, and write down these 5 answers, and then start the video again. Alright, so let's do them. calcium fluoride, magnesium. Notice that these are kind of a combination of different ones. Magnesium nitrate, magnesium oxide, ammonium sulfate, and sodium fluoride. Okay, hopefully you got all those right. Okay, so once again, stop the video, and I want you to do these. And these, you're going to need to use the chart on the back of your periodic table, because there's a few others in here that you won't have, that you haven't memorized. So look, you'll have to look those up, but use your periodic table, and on the back of that, you'll see that chart. Okay, aluminum oxide, calcium. Now this is not one of our 10, the ClO2, so you need to look this up on the chart on the back of your periodic table, and you'll see that that is chlorite. This is one of those that ends in ITE. Same thing with this one, H2PO4, and you'll see a lot of PO4 ones. There's a PO4, there's a HPO4, there's an H2PO4. So this is known as sodium dihydrogen phosphate. This is one of the few times where we actually have 3 words in the thing. So when you have a hydrogen and in the middle, a lot of times you'll get a hydrogen or a dihydrogen in the middle of this particular thing. Most of them they don't, but some of them they do. Alright, AlPl4 would be aluminum, and we did this one the other day, phosphate. And then we have strontium fluoride. Alright, so hopefully on these last 10, you guys did pretty well on those. You need to be able to do all that. You know, just I'll throw them all in there on the test. You got to be able to name them. You got to be able to write formulas. You got to be able to do all that stuff. And there you go. The end.